There we go. I think we might be hearing from another party in a moment because he just decided to settle in the little patch of sun below and beside my chair. No, okay, we're good. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Margaret Pennard, and I'm a historical fiction writer and eclectic reader. And this is a Wednesday. There he goes. Hi. This is a Wednesday wrap up. So you'll find me here on my channel every Wednesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And I do these wrap ups every other week. So I get enough books to sort of talk about for the hour and sort of have a little TV show about my reads for the couple weeks. And this week is especially a wide range, so very eclectic. And what's funny is that I went several weeks without finishing a book because of the type of books. And then all of a sudden I finished 5 in 2 days, the 12th and 13th of April in my Storygraph 5 books. So they took from this long to that long, but they all ended on the same day, which is kind of weird, but interesting. So good morning and welcome. It's morning for me. And yeah, we have 5 books to cover today. They're on the thumbnail. So if people are interested, they can always click to be notified and watch the show because of the books if they don't yet know me. But if you don't yet know me, maybe sign up and subscribe because I talk about interesting books and often books that no one's ever heard of. So the first one is going to be my historical book or research book. But before we start, I was going to point out the question of the day and say hello to the chat. The question of the day is pinned in YouTube. What's your favorite type of nonfiction at the moment? Because 4 of my 5 books today that I'll review are nonfiction, and they're very different. So there's a whole world, obviously, literally, contained in nonfiction. And I'm curious, what is your favorite type at the moment? Because I know it can change. Jim was here early and answered the question. He's reading The Blue Stockings for People, April. I'm also reading The Voyage of the Beagle, but that is mostly to avoid Cryptonomicon. You know, I have heard that. I have heard that song before. So do what you have to do, Jim. Yeah, and when you said you're reading Voyage of the Beagle to avoid Cryptonomicon, yeah, the closer you can get to the end, the more you open up. And I was thinking I sometimes do that too. I just want to get one done so that I can move on to the next one because I can't have too many going at once. So hello, Gareth is here. Book Songs and Other Magic. Welcome. Happy Wednesday evening to you. Favorite nonfiction at the moment for Gareth is music-related insights into recording sessions and tours. That is very niche. Wow. Okay. So it's music, it's biography maybe with the bands, and history with tours. That's a lot. That's a good genre mashup. I like it. Anita is here. Hello, Anita. Hello, Leslie. Good morning. Good morning. And Catpaw, good morning. Good morning. Catpaw just got a cool new calendar. Saw that on Instagram. Very neat. And Anita answered the question. Currently, my favorite type of nonfiction is true crime books. All right. Well, that's a very popular type of nonfiction. Good. And Elaine is here. Hello. Elaine just had a live about the vampire. I don't know how to say it. There's a Y in it, right? So Polidori is Italian, so maybe that's how you pronounce it. Fun live earlier today. And that is the chat. So I'm going to jump in to my first book. And I've got a banner, and I'm not going to forget them today. Boom. All right. The Life and Adventures of William Cobbett. Now, you may have heard me talk about this. I did pull it out for current reads when I only had 2 books to wrap up. So I did give you a little taste of this before. Here's the book. I like the script there. And this is not Crookshank. This is actually Gilray, the famous political cartoonist of the turn of the 19th century. That is the sort of head bust of William Cobbett. And this book is by Richard Ingrams. It was written in 2005. It's a biography, and hardcover I got in Portland. But Guess what ephemera I found in it? Does that look familiar to anybody? A London Underground ticket from 2008. So I thought that was pretty fun, and that was a good bookmark. So yeah, I love finding things in books. That's always fun. Let's see. So as I said, I picked it up for research because I always like finding like the background history and what's going on. There were a lot of valuable insights about the press, about religion, about radicalism, about politicians. There's some juicy details about politicians for sure. That just sort of like spice up the background for things in my mind when I'm reading or editing for consistency. So good research read for an author starting out. To give you an idea of the timeline, he died in 1835, I believe, which is the first year of the present day of my current novel. So, yeah, so all the things leading up to that would be what he was involved in. And fun fact, Hansard's, if anyone has looked up what people said in Parliament, there's something called Hansard's. It's a parliamentary report. Basically, they print out what everyone says and argues, and the honored gentleman this and whatever else. I have definitely looked in some of those, and they don't index them. They're just long unbroken paragraphs, which can be difficult, but you know, you can word search. They this author interprets them as having been started by William Cobbett, because he had a newspaper called the Political Register, which pretty much made him famous throughout his life. But also he started towards the end of his life, Parliamentary Debates, which was basically doing the same thing as Hansard's like 15 years before. Excuse me, still operating with allergies. And so yeah, so that's kind of a fun fact, something that still exists today that was started in his time and by one person's construction anyway. And then I had some fun quotes, but I see we have some more chat. So let me catch up before I don't know what people are talking about. Leslie. Oh, the answer to the question for Leslie is favorite type of nonfiction. Memoir. Awesome. Yeah, there's two types of memoirs I'm covering today. Nope, just one. But it's different from my usual kind, so you'll see it. Eva, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and friends, hello. And Dee Dee, hey. Hi and welcome. Nice to see you. Eva's ogling the book. That's a fun find. The bookmark, probably, the London Underground. I love finding things in books too, says Eva. Yeah. Oh, Elaine's favorite nonfiction, UFOs. All right. Well, I should have seen that coming. That's good. Eva's answer, favorite, not sure I have one lately. That's why I said at the moment, because it can definitely wax and wane. Lately, my nonfiction reading is mostly local political things. Save me, she says. Hey. No, see, last time you were in the chat, you were saying don't disown me for something or other. So here we go. This is the opposite. I'm going to go, yay, Eva, do it. Julie's here in the chat. Hello. Julie's answer, I'm doing Historathon this year, so it's historical nonfiction. Ta-da. Otherwise, I have wide-ranging and very specific interests. All right. Crime from the past, women's suffrage, and indigenous nonfiction. Those are all great. Yeah, I like, yep, interest areas. Yeah. Eva says library board meeting minutes. Hansards of your own, Hansards of the Middle West. There you go. And candidate research and such. That's great. I do love memoirs. She's a hat tip to Leslie there. New answer, memoirs. Okay. All right. Got it. Julie agrees. Predictable. Gareth says predictable. Yeah, maybe. Dee Dee says C, collective nonfiction and narrative nonfiction. Collective nonfiction. Does that mean about a movement, or does that mean about a group of people, or does that mean a group of authors? Because Jim weighed in with the Blue Stockings. He's reading for People April. It's the group read. It's a group of people that are being biographied. Is that what you, that's like collective biography. So I'm not sure what collective nonfiction, let me know. And narrative nonfiction. Yes, which is like the style and the sort of pace, that really well done narrative nonfiction. I love it too. Kara says, People April for me is going to struggle as I'm desperately trying to finish the books left over from before. Yeah. See, I even have a library book that's now overdue for Irish readathon, and I have not started it. So I may end up going back to Portland and returning it without having read it. These things happen. Collective nonfiction, my book on Stax Records. I don't know. I think Didi needs to clarify that because I haven't heard that term before. So I'd love to learn a new, maybe like it's new invented. That'd be cool. All right, so William Cobbett, history nerd here, and lots of cool things running through. So I'm not going to go through all of them because there are a fair amount there. But just to give you a taste, one of the rabbit holes in here that I had already gone down is a bit about finance. And stay with me, hear me out. So there's a thing about criticism of somebody. William Cobbett is criticizing a certain class of people who live on the elegance of the 3%. And 10 years ago, I would not have known what they were talking about. But in 2016, I read a novel called Ovington's Bank. It's a historical fiction, and it's set in early 19th century, but it's written in about 1900, I believe. So it's historical for its time as well as now. And it's talking about the setup of a bank and the failure of the bank. And sort of you got to learn about how things were done in those days, which is crazy different and fascinating. So not only was I spurred on to know what actually this meant because of things that are referenced in Jane Austen, like 10,000 a year. And you're like, what does that mean? That means that his interest for the year that he gets without picking up a pencil is 10,000. So imagine how many pounds he has in the bank that are making that his interest. 3%, right? So basically that was government bonds that you held, and that was the only kind of way before stocks that you could have interest like that. So really, really rich folks, and he's criticizing that class because he likes the honest laborer's day's work. There's also some funny, quirky things in here. People will probably know Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was sort of immediately before William Cobbett. Cobbett didn't like Thomas Paine at first when he was a young man because he thought he was a godless radical and he was feeling more conservative. And then as he got older, he's like, wow, he had some really good ideas. So revisited his opinion. And when he was buried in America, sort of a nationless stranger, he dug up his bones and brought them back to England to bury them. But once in England, he asked numerous churches around his hometown or current town, and they all refused him burial because he was not an atheist. Some of the founding fathers were known as deists, right? Deists. So there was no one God. And so they refused him burial. And even the Quakers did. And William Cobbett gave up. And now no one knows where the bones of Thomas Paine ended up. Like, mystery for the ages. I thought that was pretty wild. So that was a good quirk to find. He talked about, here was a funny thing. Here's just like the funny like tidbits that I picked up that I'm just dropping in front of you to entice you to read a biography that may look a bit dry. So there's a trial of Queen Caroline in 1820, because 1820 is when we have the actual regency. George III dies, Prince Regent George IV becomes the monarch. And this brings back the whole scandal of the woman he married, who he sort of made a bigamist wife. So is she really his wife? And she's totally maltreated, and he hates her and she hates him. And she's been in Europe for the entire time of their marriage before he comes to the throne. So anyway, she's put on trial because they're trying to portray her as a loose woman who shouldn't be the queen. And they get some witnesses, and one of them is an Italian, and his answer is, no mi ricordo, no mi ricordo. And so this becomes so many times a thing of the trial that it was like a meme back in the day, which, if you know some of the congressional representatives we have in the US, is kind of funny. It's just really hilarious to me. Mike Johnson. So yeah, so even back in 1820, we had meme culture, and I don't recall, right? What else? We've got the juicy tidbits about politicians like Lord Castlereagh in 1822 was the foreign secretary. He slit his throat with a penknife, committed suicide because he was being blackmailed about sexual activities, and he had actually been like, what's that called? Entrapped by some people. So there's some dark stuff in there as well. There's there's a really funny passage I haven't read to you yet on page 227 that really chimed a sympathy in my heart, because he's talking about 1830 and rick burning. And if you don't know, ricks are like the big piles of hay where hay is stored after the harvest when they're going to sell it, right? And so rick burning is a reference to peasants getting so fed up with their quality of life and not being able to eat and not being able to cultivate their own food, etc., that they burn all the hay that they've harvested themselves because they're so angry they want to change the system some way. And that is the only way to make rich people pay attention, is to burn their goods. Does that sound like anything happened this weekend? Like, I don't know. That might also have a ripple echo effect down the ages. Let me know if you've heard the news. But anyway, he's talking about the rick burners and how he has sympathy for them because they really are like going hungry and slowly starving. So he talks about this one walk he took with his 13-year-old son, Richard. It's a couple of paragraphs, so lock in. The way seemed long, and when I had to speak in answer to Richard, the speaking was as brief as might be, because he forgot breakfast. Unfortunately, just at this critical period, one of the loops that held the strap of Richard's little portmanteau broke, and it became necessary for me to fasten the portmanteau on before me upon my saddle. This, which was not the work of more than 5 minutes, would, had I had a breakfast, have been nothing at all, and indeed matter of laughter. But now it was something. It was his fault for capering and jerking about so. I jumped off, saying, "Here, I'll carry it myself." And then I began to take off the remaining strap, pulling with great violence and great haste. Just at this time my eyes met his, in which I saw great surprise, and feeling the just rebuke, feeling heartily ashamed of myself, I instantly changed my tone and manner, cast the blame upon the saddler, and talked of the effectual means which we would take to prevent the like in future. Now, if such was the effect produced upon me by the want of food for only 2 or 3 hours, if the not having breakfasted could, and under such circumstances, make me what you may call cross to a child like this, whom I must necessarily love so much, how great are the allowances that we ought to make for the poor creatures who, in this once happy and now miserable country, are doomed to lead a life of common labor and half starvation. So, 1830, William Cobbett has a hangry episode, and so that's what, like, near and dear to my heart. He got hangry and went, wow, what if people had to live like this all the time, half starved? You know, people get it eventually, right? Let's visit the chat because I've been talking for a while. So Stax Records, Cat Paw said that would be interesting. Eva says that cover looks so familiar. It may just be from a prior video. Yeah, it's like a political cartoon from 1815 or so. So I don't know where you might have seen that. But I did do a few quotes from it last wrap up. Elaine, lol, I could have said ancient Egypt, Atlantis, quantum physics, options. Yeah, tons of interests. That's the fun part. Yeah, I really want to read it. The Stax Records. Okay, so collective nonfiction is about a group of people. Thank you for clarifying, Dee Dee. I'm currently reading the 272, The Families Who Were Enslaved and Sold to Build the American Catholic Church. What? Okay, I haven't heard of this one. The American Catholic Church by Rachel L. Swarns, about a group of people. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so Blue Stockings would qualify. I've only read a couple like these, but like a group biography or even bigger, like a whole subset of the population. Really interesting. Yeah, Gareth says that sounds like a great book. The Catholic thing will tickle Gareth. Yeah. Elaine, does that include Dr. Sleep? I don't know. Dee Dee says, it is very interesting. I didn't know anything about this. Yeah, I don't either. So that's like interesting. Elaine, yeah, I'm still just halfway through. The last 2 weeks have been crazy. Oh, that they're talking about a readathon or a read along. Trying to finish a 167-page book so that I know I've finished something. Haha. Been reading it for almost a week. Yeah, in sympathy with Jim here, trying to get through one before you open another. Elaine says, well, you've had some awesome news to share. Yes, congratulations to a new first-time grandpapa, all for Gareth. Hit the like button. Thank you, Dee Dee. I like hearing news many times. There you go. We get to share it. Definitely AI. What? I love sharing the big news. Also had some crap stuff too. Yeah, well, yep. Swings and roundabouts, isn't that what you say? I want to read that too. Yeah. And I love anthropology and culture and slice of life, but when the slice is a big moment. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, what I think I'll illustrate this slice of life. I often hear people using that with cozy books. So, like the Korean bookshop book that I was reading is a cozy slice of life. But I think this is in opposition when the slice of life is a big moment. Like there's a big change going on and maybe lots of action and the history, the backstory is coming into play. So that's a great take. Eva, collective nonfiction, new term for me. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was asking Dee Dee to explain it a bit more because it was for me too. The warmth. Oh yeah. Okay. So subset of the population. The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, I think it would be another example, collective nonfiction. And that's great. If you have not read The Warmth of Other Suns, it is a book detailing three successive waves of migration from the south of the United States to the Northeast, the Midwest, and the West, and what they were spurred by, how the people fared, how they were treated, how they integrated or did not. And yeah, really, really interesting. Great read too, just like fascinating. I would kind of call that narrative nonfiction too. I think it's less dry than her book Cast. So grandpapa sounds older than granddad. Okay, well, we have different things across the pond, I think. My daughter thought I was going to be Bambi, which is a Welsh term, but I'm not that Welsh. How funny. My family is, but I'm pretty much full English. Yeah. The full English. Yeah, funny. And I don't, maybe Eva did reference it, but my reference to Rick burning is in light of the past weekend where I heard there were 9 possible warehouse fires. And if you haven't heard the news, because maybe you're not on TikTok, Elaine, look it up because it's some interesting social experiments going on. Yes, Warmth of Other Suns, also narrative nonfiction. That would make you laugh. Yeah, that's good. All right, so Cobbett gets hangry. What else do I have to share from this? Ooh, I have another fun reference. Page 243. You may have heard me talk about the map book. I was talking about the lost maps, and it was someone from UCL who is not a cartographer, a map historian, basically. And he took us into like the making of all these maps and some really interesting histories, including the Nazis, but also like the history of map making, which was really interesting. But there's a piece in there that made me go down a rabbit hole about the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge. I was like, that is such a cool term. Do we still have that? And no, it was made defunct not long after it started, but it was a 19th century, not religious organization for people to print things at a cheap cost to distribute things like maps or not textbooks, but like new discoveries. So kind of like a National Geographic, I would imagine, but like 4 pages or something so that it was cheap enough to print. And on page 243, sometime previously, Henry Broome, I've learned in this book that's how it's pronounced, now the Lord Chancellor, a man who is concerned in his own way just as much as Cobbett with helping to educate the lower orders, had formed a society for the diffusion of useful knowledge, publishing pamphlets, any work of useful tendency and sound principles on astronomy, animal physiology, the life of Galileo, etc. I thought, I know that. That's so fun. So that's this book talking to an earlier book, but I don't remember that Henry Broome was the one highlighted. So now I'm gonna have to go back and like check on that more because that's fun. That's a fun detail. And then there are also a couple points in this where Cobbett, as a personality, he was like a big man on the scene that many people had opinions on, right? But so is Oscar Wilde. And there are 2 points in this where there are quotes taken from both that are eerily similar. There's one from Oscar Wilde saying, "I have nothing to declare but my genius." And when Cobbett is going from America to England, they ask him a similar question, and his friend says for him, he has nothing no weapons to declare, but his mind, which if he had not used it, he wouldn't be here because he's been exiled to escape a prosecution. So it was pretty funny. And then the second one was understanding machines, and I again felt a sympathy in sympathy with this habit because I wish I was better at mechanical things, but I am not. And so there's a quote by Oscar Wilde that I wrote in high school. It says, "I like work. It fascinates me. I could sit and watch it for hours," which is funny because you think, oh, he likes working. You're like, no, he likes watching working. He's a man of leisure. And similarly, Cobbett writes, "I never liked to see machines." He wrote, "Lest I should be tempted to endeavor to understand them. I constantly resisted all the natural desire which people had to explain them to me. As in the case of the sun and the moon and the stars, I was quite satisfied with witnessing the effects." Isn't that funny? There's like 2 words. The quote is very, very much the same. And I like that one. Witnessing the effects, not having to understand the infernal combustion, for example. So, this took me 5 weeks, about a pretty long time. And it's a good work. It's solid work. It's definitely good biography to get details about the time and about the person if you are interested. And funny, there's definitely funny bits. I shared a few of those. But it's sort of like a workhorse. I think the writing is pretty plain. And yeah, so, maybe 3.75 stars. That's what I would give it. I'd recommend it for history buffs for sure. If you're in Historathon, doing any of that, trying to get your different eras done. And if you can find the book, because it's, 20 years old, so it might be hard to find. Bean is in the sunny spot, so I think we're good as long as I don't move the chair. Let's see. Oh, Eva says, "I only heard at the first big warehouse. I'll go seek out the weekend news." Thank you. Yeah, the big Kimberly-Clark warehouse was the first, and I think there were a few others. Now we want a full English. Well, that's the danger of talking and talking about hangry speeches, Gareth. Me too, Gareth, says Julie. I could murder a full English. Oh, see, double meaning. Careful there. Careful. And ironically, Oscar Wilde was sentenced to hard labor. Well, yeah, that wouldn't be a parallel because William Cobbett was used to doing hard labor, and he was sentenced to time in Newgate, which really altered the course of his life, but didn't ruin his health. There's a blip, but yeah, he was a very robust individual in his constitution. Yeah, for the quote. Okay, so that is the first book, and I try to be speedier about the others to be in the hour. Okay, this was a reread. You may have heard me talk about Being a Jane Austen Mystery and Stephanie Barron before. She is, well, before I tell you about the author, I'll tell you about why I read it. I found this in a used bookstore. I didn't have a copy of it at home, checked on Storygraph, and I wanted some fiction diversion between Cobbett and the Songs of Trees and all the nonfiction that I was reading. I was like, I want to just read something I know I love. So I picked this up, and it was a reread. Jane and the Ghosts of Netley by Stephanie Barron. So in this, Jane Austen is an amateur sleuth, and she is my favorite of the Jane Austen amateur sleuth genre. There's a whole genre. My favorite of the kind. And this author, Stephanie Barron, is an author who really does Regency history well, and the pitch and pace and vocabulary of Jane Austen is very like, so it's enjoyable. She was also a CIA analyst, so she has another pen name where she writes spy thrillers, or did. But I think she's written her final one in this series, and I'm not sure what she's working on now. She did turn to another whole series that was based in Cape Cod, I think, and it was like cozy mystery, so not exactly my style, but if you like cozy mystery, her writing is really good. A little bit of the inspo. It's my notepad app is auto-correcting, so I'm trying to remember what I wrote this morning. Inspiration for Northanger Abbey. So if you can tell, I mean, it's talking about ghosts, and it's got sort of a gothic arch here. She does reference Susan, which is the manuscript for Northanger Abbey. It was at a publisher, and so she's talking about it in this book as a real person about having her book. I just thought that was cool. Those things are fun if you're a real Jane Austen fan. So besides the Northanger Abbey setting, there's also a lot of Napoleonic Wars, spy, intrigue, and that sort of thing. That's the main driver of the plot for this one. But here's the thing. I would not recommend reading Ghost of Netley outside of the series, because there's an arc in there with another character that this is the end of it. So I wouldn't want to, without saying any more, I wouldn't want you to read this and then go backwards. Like, you need the build up to really appreciate that arc within the series. Yes, and I won't mention the character because you'll probably know once you read a couple. So that was delightful. Hold on a second here. Okay, I just really needed to blow my nose. I didn't want to subject you to that. So, second book down, that was a pretty simple one. The next one, On Muscle. And for this one, I am sharing this type of screen because, oh, I didn't do that right. Let's move it. There we go. Is that better? There we go. Okay, so here's the cover. On Muscle by Bonnie Tsui, and this is an audiobook. We love Libro.fm for audiobooks, so thank you to Audiobooks and Hachette Audio for making it available, and Bonnie Tsui, the author. So she has a much more famous book called Why We Swim, because she's a swimmer, and she talks about life, so it's sort of a mix of memoir and science. It's not a nature memoir, as I would talk about like animals and plants, but it is a science memoir. And I don't really have any others to compare it to, because she's talking about experiments and, physiological phenomena and anatomy and what's the cadavers and different things about muscles, right? And so some of it is very technical, but some of it is also very memoirish. So at the beginning, it really kind of threw me because I was expecting for this to be science stuff. And she starts in with their relationship with her dad, make me a muscle. And when she was young with her brother, they would do, martial arts, and he would teach them and wanted them to be strong and exercise and kick and all this stuff. And it just seemed a distraction at first because I thought I was getting a science book. But I found that this is really more of a Rebecca Solnit type meander, and that she has different carve-outs, like little pockets that she does deeper dives in, and they're not at all connected. So at the beginning, there was the part about her growing up with her brother and her dad leaving and going back to, I don't remember if it was Taiwan or Hong Kong, somewhere off the Chinese mainland. And just like becoming distant and like sort of having this break in their relationship. And that's a big thing. So she grew up with this foundation in muscle and exercise, and then had it break because her role model departed. So then we talk about muscles. The next thing I remember is the strongman competitions. There's Jack LaLanne that she references, who's a Californian who I've heard of. There's Jan Todd, who is not. She's, I think, a professor now, but she, as a young person in the 70s, competed in strongman competitions and was the first woman to do so in many of them, including holding and walking with the Dinnie Stones, which is a Scottish strongman competition, and seriously awesome, like heavy, like respectable. So that was kind of a cool Scotland link there. And then just sort of zooming back to talk about the beauty and aesthetics of muscles depending on what body they're on, which I thought was a really neat discussion. So a little bit of that. Then she talked about Uh, Mechanics, proprioception versus interoception. I don't think I've ever heard that word before, but she starts it by talking about cats, which, okay, obviously gonna love that. But cats are good at landing on their feet because they have excellent proprioception. Is that right, Bean? Which means that you can feel or sense the space of your body within space, like the borders of your body. So you can tell if you're upside down. You can tell where the ground is. You can tell, how far, if you're going to do this for a drunk driving test, like where your nose is in relative to your finger, kind of thing. But interoception is actually the ability to feel things inside the borders of your body. So, like, what's it called? Muscle can be slow twitch, it can be fast twitch. Those are new terms to me. But it can also be involuntary, so things like your heart or uh your intestines, things that are moving around. Like, we don't generally have interoception about things that are happening. But she goes into like how the skin receptors work and how your hair rises for goosebumps, and like how things work in your spine. Like, really interesting, based on muscle, but kind of only vaguely related or changed down to that topic. So I really liked that. She does a big section on disability and yoga and the effect on muscles and the brain. So she talks to someone who, I don't know if he had a podcast or, yeah, I think he had a podcast, who was paralyzed. I'm trying to think if it must have been from the waist down. And he has this whole program where he's now a yoga teacher, where they're doing all these different things to mimic movement. And so the sensation of like someone pressing on your feet will send a signal to your brain, even if you're uh, the paraplegic nature of the nerves not working or the muscles not working. There's still something that is communicating through the nerves, through the sensors to your brain and back. And that actually can have an effect both on the muscle and on the brain and like the activity of the brain. I thought that's fascinating. So his section was really cool. And then there's one on endurance towards the end, where they were talking about endurance was sort of voluntarily going through pain and giving a burden on yourself to prove something, to teach yourself something. And her question was, what can pain teach humans today when convenience is the rule of the day and efficiency is the be all and end all of our economies? Which I thought was a really valid question, really interesting to ponder. My query after that, which I was thinking on after I was listening, was the physical versus mental endurance. How closely are they related? Do they translate the teachings? And what do you gain from it? She uses as an example Koo Stevens, who is an indigenous runner in Nevada. And he has started this, I think, a 50-mile, was it 50 miles? It may have been longer. 100-mile, whatever it is, marathon over 5 days, where many people are running for many different reasons, but they join him because his great-grandfather was at an indigenous boarding school, a native boarding school, and ran home 3 times to be with his family instead of at the school. And this is over this great distance through high altitude, forest, desert, you name it, right? No food, no water, just like ran home for days. And so this endurance example is highly meaningful to him. And he talks about reaching that point where you're like, are you going to go or are you going to stop? And when he reaches that point in his own running, and he's like a famous runner now, what makes him keep going is, he says, for my people. And he just has this overwhelming sort of swept up feeling of this is the point of this, is the mental discipline, or just overriding your comfort level, which I found really inspiring. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting pockets in this, but there's no guarantee, there's no knowing going in what she's going to talk about. And I wouldn't say that the muscle part is really what is most interesting about the book. She's made it a memoir, talked about science, but brought in a lot of different people's inspirational stories. So that's what I see is sort of Rebecca Solnit about it, is that she knits together all these stories to end with a feeling of positivity and hopefulness, even in very desperate situations. So also great book. Wouldn't have thought I was going to be the reader for it going in, but then gradually some of the stories really hit me. So good stuff. Oh, well, that's when people start putting asterisks in. Yeah, I think you're fine, Julie. Love artwork on book covers. I don't know which one you're talking about. There's a political cartoon, there's a ghost, and then there's a sort of graphic. So I don't know. We're going to have to say a mumble or mutter of crows now. Oh, yeah, collective nouns. Won't get past the censors. We're in 1984. Gareth says, I didn't see the message, Julie. I just want to get a cup of tea. I could murder a full English, is what she said. You can rewind it. Meow. Leslie saying hello to Bean. Cat paw. I don't know. Sorry for the confusion. Oh, the mutter of crows. Yeah. Silly. Elaine is back. I just reminded Noah he will have corrected by Saturday. That's fine. And, you know, this email that he will magically have to send us all the link. If it mysteriously doesn't reach me, I'll let you know, Elaine. Elaine, any biscuits with your tea? I miss British biscuits, says Jim out in Georgia. Yeah. And Gareth, eating my dinner, which I realized I hadn't eaten, tuna and cucumber rolls. Like maki rolls, or what roll do you mean? I'm not sure if you're talking about sushi or... I'd move again for biscuits. Yeah, I would believe that. Gareth definitely would. Okay, so now we're back to book number 3, which is a in-person book, and it's this one. And you're going to judge me for this one. So again, hear me out. This is another recent purchase. So the Stephanie Barron reread was a recent purchase, and so is this. Now, you may look at this and roll your eyes, right? It's a rainbow, The Home Edit Life by Clara Shearer and Joanna Teplin. And it's a very pretty book. It's got rainbow edges as well because it's organized, about organizing your life by like different color sections, which was amazing. But, you know, it's a picture book. It's talking about how to organize. And frankly, it's a pair of organizers who are a team who have had a highly successful book before this, which I hadn't heard of. I just saw this in a used bookstore. And the type of work they're doing, you could tell they're working for very, very wealthy people and have loads of storage and loads of money to play with. So it's not my usual fare, but there are principles people use with organizing. And I'm always curious as to whether other people's are slightly better or, you know, get more done. Because I kind of get stuck every once in a while with my just declutter and organize and, you know, that kind of round of trying to live comfortably in my apartment. So the rainbow is fun. So I picked this up and like it was just a day and a half. I went through it and just it was calming. It was a nice rest. It was a rest from the chaos of the world and being able to organize things in a clear, lucid manner. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just need to like look at a well-planned system and let your brain relax and your nervous system swim in the cleanness of the vibe, right? So a visual delight purchase is what I called this, with a few key additions to the typical sassy organizing books. There's definitely sass in this. There's definitely like humor in the way that they tried to write it. One of the things that I saw leafing through it was that they had, here's how to organize a YouTube studio. And I was like, what? My ears perked up because I thought that's new. That's different. That's cool. And there are also, of course, a few pages about how to organize your books. And so there's some new things to consider there that I thought fun. And as well as a few things about how to fit into tight spaces. Like if your walls come in and the closet is bigger than the entry to the closet, stuff like that. Like it's just kind of difficult things to work around. I was surprised, I will say, that in the introduction to this team of two, they revealed their Enneagram types. And I thought, not many people know their Enneagram types these days. So the fact that I did growing up, I thought, oh, well, they're like simpatico, maybe. I mean, not really. Like, they're very different. They lead very different lives. But I thought it was cool that one of them was a 4 like me. And yeah, as I said, very wealthy clients that they're, and they name drop a lot of them. So I'd say like 80% of these examples for different situations, they say, in this person's room, in Dwayne Wade's shoe closet, or shoe room, I should say. So that was kind of funny. That just made me kind of like roll my eyes and laugh. So another like break book where I was just enjoying it for a little bit of escapism. Let's see. I'd move for biscuits. That's the theme of this one. Cucumber and tuna rolls. It's a baguette cut up into sections. Oh, okay. We would call that a grinder sandwich, or a, what do they call it? A sub, or anyway, there's different regional names for it, but I get what you mean now. Hi, Ven. He caught a live one, which has a funny meaning as well. Jim says, for the next week, we'll be eating pasca, Easter cake, and red eggs. This happens every year in the aftermath of Easter. Yeah, so, I mean, it's not British biscuits, but it is a nice little treat. Sounds nice. I still have a couple of Easter eggs to eat. That's good. Did you still dye them? At home? Or are you talking about chocolate eggs? I love books that help with ideas. Yeah. I have been watching tiny homes videos for ideas. Yes. Yeah. They're similar, right? They're like, here are the problem areas, or here's the things that you might be struggling with trying to bring together. And you go, oh, I could use that in this situation. And it's just a nice, like, sort of way to enjoy someone else struggling with something so that you don't have to, right? So I like that. Ven is everywhere today, apparently. Okay. Chocolate eggs, no dyed eggs. Eggs are dyed in Georgia. Yeah, the red eggs. Yeah. I don't suppose that they came out that way. So yeah. All right. So final book here is another physical book. And it's another one that had a lot of things to talk about. So I'm not going to go through all those because we don't have that much time. But also, this was a buddy read. And next Wednesday, my buddy reader, Alan of Alan's Reads, and I are going to be discussing this. So I'll save my fun little things for next Wednesday at 10 a.m. The book is The Songs of Trees by David George Haskell, who's gotten some good critical acclaim from previous books, Stories from Nature's Great Connectors. Some really cool things here. So the title is a good clue as to whether you will enjoy this. Obviously, if you like trees, that's a good start. But also the songs, right? He gets really into the soundscape of trees and their environment. So he used a recording equipment. He made graphs. He has recordings on his website, which were delightful. And also has like a hydroscope for the tree's roots in water, and like different things I'd never even heard of, but I had heard of the science before. So the book I read, called Gathered by the Chaotic Foragers, her handle, I can't remember her name right now. It was really good. She talked about using a microphone that went into the soil so she could like listen to the things crawling around in the soil, which was cool. And also, in case you don't know, my friend Alice Henderson is an author who writes climate fiction / wildlife thrillers. It's a mashup for sure, but she bases a lot of the setting and detail, like the plot detail, on her own work, which is field work measuring wildlife populations, whether it's the sounds they make, the population numbers, where they're migrating, what they're leaving behind, all this kind of stuff. So she's big on endangered animals. And so she uses some of these same things to record their sounds. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And if you want to learn more about that, you should see Solitude of Wolverines, which has like literal footage basically in her novel about a scientist going to set up a recorder to capture wolverines. And that's not all she captures. Let's just say that. So that's the soundscape part, but let's see what else. Okay, so the tone, right? So Alan, in his brief review, said that he is a quirky writer, and I'm not sure I agree with that characterization, but maybe that's because I am a quirky reader. So this sort of tone that he takes, I'll give you an example, is one that I really jive with, and the people who are watching will probably jive with as well. So the first book, the first tree he treats is the ceibo, which is an Amazonian tall canopy tree and essential to the indigenous folks who live there. It's like their god tree and also essential to the ecosystem, which kind of goes together. But if you've ever heard people talk about indigenous religion as, what do they call it? Fantasy. That's it. So if you're talking about religion, and for Western religions, you call it religion, but for non-Western whatever religions, you call it fantasy and books. This is for those people. This is really like to set you back on your heels. So he's talking to someone who's trying to explain that you can't really understand people talking to a tree as a friend and a god and a spirit, unless you believe it. Like, you can't understand the relationship and the interdependence unless you believe it as real. And you choose to believe things are real, right? But we don't. We're so in it. We're so in the mix that it's hard to understand how some of the things we believe are real are just because we all agree they're real, like the Tao. So here's the piece that I thought was great. The Western mind can perceive and understand abstractions, such as ideas, rules, processes, connections, and patterns. These are all invisible, yet we believe them to be as real as any object. Amazonian forest spirits are analogous, perhaps, to Western reality dreams such as money, time, and nation states. And I was like, yes, just yes, put them in their place. So I just really like that. That's the tone. That's the where we're situating ourselves on the continuum of reality. So I appreciate that. Needless to say, this is a great Climathon read. Yes, sounds interesting. I didn't put up the banner for myself. There we go. What else do I have? Tree DNA. It corrected DNA to Dan. No, thank you. DNA. Stupids. So tree DNA that has memory. And that made me think of interoception. You know, I was talking about knowing what's going on inside your body and being able to sense and feel things inside your body. And we don't really have that skill. The trees have it. The trees have a nervous system that they can feel and manipulate and signal and choose to do things with, which I thought was so cool. So it's like interoception. And you know, that book that I read, When Trees Testify, is really, that's what I was hoping for, is like the memory of trees. Like, how do trees store? How does their DNA change? How do seedlings learn from trees' mistakes? That sort of thing. Or, you know, bad seasons, not mistakes. So, for example, the balsam fir tree, this is the second one they do, also remembers. If caterpillars or moose browse its needles, the nibbling assault lodges itself in the chemical makeup of the tree, in a manner analogous to the changes in a chickadee's nerve cells after a near miss with a predator. The tree's subsequent growth is more heavily defended by unpalatable resins, like a bird turned jumpy by its bad experience with a hawk. The fir also remembers air temperatures dating back nearly a year, a memory that helps the tree to know when to winterize its cells. Isn't that cool? How do they know that? How do they know that? Plant memories can cross generations as the offspring of stressed parents inherit an enhanced capacity to generate genetic diversity when they breed, even if this next generation experiences benign conditions. We only partly understand how plants hold these memories. And I thought that was fascinating. Isn't that cool? I learned what a stromatolite is. sort of a fossil kind of thing. Lots of new words. I kept asking Alan, do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? And he's like, some of these are specialist words that I forgot are specialist. But yeah. So autocorrect, no thank you. Talking about trees that close their pores on their leaves so that they don't lose moisture. So brilliant adaptations. I didn't really know how they worked. So palms can do that. And then I thought, I know giant sequoias survive fires, so it must be a different mechanism because they don't have anything like that in their bark, and their bark is what is resistant to fire. So it's interesting. I loved where they had a whole section about hazel and how hazel ruled Northern Europe. It was just everywhere. And they found this out by digging out the ground for one of the Queensferry Bridge. What's that called? When you sink the footing of a bridge in somewhere, they went down enough that they found this like Mesolithic era house with evidence of hazelnut eating and hazel stick burning. It's just so cool. So this, as you can tell, varies a lot. It goes from country to country, from age to age, from leaf to trunk to roots. Yeah. Here's another example. 136. It's a great quote that is emblematic of his statements on the danger we're in from the climate crisis. He's very quiet in saying these things, but it is a pretty dramatic thing when you think about it. Here we go. Lately, for the last few hundred years, we've been in a relatively cool and wet time. So we built our infrastructure, town centers, reservoirs, suburbs, as if fire were a rare aberration. That time is over. We're all now downstream of the burn. Yeah. So stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that's what Alan is saying is quirky, but I find that really impactful because only by saying things in that way, I think, do you enter a lot of people's consciousness sort of under the radar? Like, oh yeah, there's this and this and town planning and that, and then like downstream of the burn. Like what? Like, I think people need to hear that. So I think this is a really great book. He also talks about extrasensory perceptions of nature by humans, like how humans can feel trees. There's just a lot of cool things. Like we're part of nature. We can't other nature. We can't dominate nature. We are nature. So this whole artificial separation is really harming us. Everything is interconnected. Talked about Denver and when you have salt and silt on the roads to keep the roads clear for people to drive, because everyone needs to drive everywhere all the time. When they get washed away, he said, Denver's waters briefly become mine tailings. And so it just, he gets really graphic. If you understand the terms, if you know what mine tailings are and how dangerous they are, you're like, ugh. So yeah, I think he's just really a quiet yet dramatic style of delivering this information. There's a piece about trees and cities. There's a piece about the olive tree in Jerusalem and like the big irony. There's a really good piece about like the irony because Israeli Jews who are claiming and taking over these olive orchards and making a business of the olive oil, they consume a lot less oil than their Arab neighbors, he says. And so their market is something they're destroying. So where are they going to send this oil? How are they going to get higher prices if everyone is doing it and the prices go down? It's kind of like you're shooting yourself in the foot. So the olive oil chapter is interesting. And then there's a bonsai chapter that's talking about humans in relationship with trees in a very easy to see way. I just think I thought he was really, really good. And, you know, even if I'm not a sound geek, which some of you are out there, I know, and I can't really understand the stuff that he's talking about sometimes, the metaphors really just get me there. And his, hey, Bean is knocking Beans off the bed by going under the blanket and what's it called? Not burying. burrowing under the blanket. Thanks a lot, dude. So anyway, yes, probably like 4.75 stars for me. Like a little dense, but like really recommend. Great climathon read, great nature read. Not so much on the memoir. He doesn't really talk about himself at all. So it's very much nature focused and world focused. A little bit of history of science, a little bit of what are we doing to ourselves. But yeah, really, really good. Thank you. See what you did? All right, so that is my 5th book, and it is 1 hour. What did you guys think of those? Any going on your lists? DNA, that's one of my songs. Okay, aside, Elaine says, humans have that skill. Most don't use it. Need to listen to your body and pay attention. Yeah, different levels. I think most of us do not have good interoception. I think we've got relative levels of proprioception, but the interoception is just something that's not valued at all. You're told to ignore what you feel and just go through and do the standard thing. So I just thought that was a really neat way of looking at it. Yeah, Songs of Trees sounds very interesting. I found that in a little free library in Portland. So yay! Circular economy and not creating new demand. Leslie says, I think my daughter will like the Songs of Trees. I bet she would. I think that's a good call. Yeah, you could probably find a used copy. He's pretty popular as a science writer. Being mean. And now I don't know where he went. All right. So I've got a little futzy chores to do today. So I'm gonna there we go. I'm gonna close out pretty soon here. What else do I have? I have upcoming events. Oh, and current reads. So current reads, I just wanted to touch on. It's funny because we're doing an Ursula K. Le Guin Hainish cycle, which Gareth is joined in. I think no one else on the stream. But I spent 2.5 months looking for a copy of this and finally had to just get the super expensive hardcover because I really want to join and I'm not listening to an e-audiobook from the library. No. So now I've got this, and hopefully if I like it, I'll have a really cool edition of Ursula K. Le Guin's Left Hand of Darkness. So I'm not too far in. I'm like 5 chapters in. Interesting so far. Not really sure where it's going, but really cool world. And in not finding it at one of the first bookstores, I did see this and snapped it up because that looks fun. Ursula K. Le Guin's Book of Cats. Look at this. And this is just goofy. This is just goofy. So there's poems, so it's going to satisfy the poem prompt for one of my readathons. But it's also got cartoons, cat tai chi. Yeah, little goofy cats. Please, yeah, let the cat out. Just diabolical. It's really fun. And I thought this is going to be something that's just going to delight. So I'm enjoying that. And the last one I just started yesterday, I guess, 2 days ago, on Time and Water. This is a climathon read that I said I would pick up before the Climate Courage book because I figured I'd want to read that one more, so I should get to this one first because then I'll reward myself. Turns out this is really good. This is really good. This is by an Icelandic writer. He's like an environmental writer, but he's really connecting to some deep things culturally and in a way where it's not a typical man space. He's saying, like, why are we circumscribing ourselves with this language, and why aren't people understanding how dangerous this is, and the words themselves, and understanding the impact. It's really good so far. And right now he's in the middle of an interview with the Dalai Lama when the Dalai Lama went to Iceland. Like, what? So really, really cool. Enjoying much more than I thought. And so that and 2 Ursula K. Le Guin's. Great lineup for current reads. And then upcoming events, as I said, we have a group tag live. So this is going to be the 3rd in our series, and it's going to be on Noah the Bookworm's Worm with a Y channel on Saturday, this Saturday, April 18th. And I'll pop it in the chat in case anyone's interested. I'm not on the thumbnail. I'm not in the description, but, you know, I am in the chat. So hopefully I'll get noticed on that. And then the other one, just a reminder, is Alan's Reads will be joining me to talk about Songs of Trees a little bit more. He is a plant scientist, so he will probably be better able to go deep on some of these topics, and yeah, we can chat about that. And then so that will be my regular Wednesday time, 10 a.m. Pacific. It will also be on Earth Day. So if you want to celebrate Earth Day, Wednesday, April 22nd, anyway, bring something, drop an emoji for Earth, whatever you feel moved to do. And then don't forget, next Saturday, April 25th, is Independent Bookstore Day. So make your plan. Like I said, I put up a video last Friday, and I'm just very excited about independent bookstores. Not last Friday, last Wednesday. And I want people to make a plan, find one to support, do something fun for yourself in that vein, so that we can all see more independent bookstores and fewer monopolies who are screwing over their warehouse workers. So there we go. What else have we got for the chat? Yes. Huzzah for little free libraries. Yes, Julie, I agree. Thank you for being here, Gareth. Cat paws, little cat. Yes, that's Bean. That's Beanie Boy. I really enjoyed it. Stopped me doing teacher stuff. Okay. Nice copy of Left Hand of Darkness. Yeah. Well, I went to like 6 different bookstores and no one had a used copy of it. I was like, I couldn't find hardly any Ursula K. Le Guin. I would only find thirsty novels. I'm like, I've read those and that's not what we're reading. So it was kind of frustrating. So when I finally saw the new one and it was only in hardcover, I was like, fine. spend all the money. I think you'll like it. It locks into place halfway through. Yes, I've monitored the chat. It's not spoilery yet, but yeah, there's a part where they said you can't stop reading, and I'm like, she's good. So I have no lack of confidence. I don't know what that is. It looks like we may be getting a new cat, a kitten, in addition to the grandchild. Another life change. Oh, that's cute. So you're going to go from dogs to one dog and a cat? That'll be fun. Cat Puss says, I need to reread The Dispossessed soon. Yeah, I was trying to pick up a copy of that as well, because I think that's in the Hainish cycle, and I couldn't find that either. So I'll have to make the rounds in Portland again when I go back up, because it's not the next one. So I'm safe for another few weeks. I don't know if I've ever read something from an Icelandic writer. I need to change that. Yeah. What's his name? Andre Snare Magnusson. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's the name. Andre Snare Magnusson. A lot of really cool cultural things, which I don't know anything about Iceland. So it's good that he explains them. Ooh, On Time and Water. Yay. Dispossessed is my fave Le Guin book. Ooh, nice. Yeah, Julie. Mine too. Upcoming events, and there's the link. Ven says expect chaos. Yep, there we go. Yep, and there's the reminders about Earth Day, so live on my channel, and Independent Bookstore Day, not on my channel, but out in the world for sure. Yes, try and catch the lives. Cool. Well, that's us, everybody. So boom, final banner. I didn't forget it. And Bean says thanks for watching. He's still got a little sunny spot, so we're all good here. I hope you are experiencing some nice weather wherever you are. It is tax day, so hopefully your taxes are done if you're an American. And if you're anywhere else, hopefully your weather is good and your reading is magical. So take care, everyone, and I will see you on Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific for some more eclectic reads. All right. Happy reading, everybody.